Welcome everyone to another episode of Leaders Podcast, where I get the opportunity to discuss this industry, the intelligence and investigation world, with some senior figures from all over the world. Today, I'm honoured to be joined by Mark Hodgson, who's a good friend, a fellow colleague, an expert investigator. He's the chairman and founder of Tremark Associates. He's also a past president of the Association of British Investigators and has actually been re-elected to be vice president. Welcome, Mark. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everybody, or good day, everybody, wherever you are. As Mike said, I am the chairman of Tremark Associates, business I founded in 1995, and I have the pleasure of being Mike's vice at the Association of British Investigators.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark. Good to have you on. So obviously we're going to talk about the investigation world and the industry as a whole. But before we get into the nitty gritty, Vice President ABI, how come you've come back?
Well, I think as the business has grown, I took a step away from being the president of the ABI. I was drained, I think, with work. I had far too much going on. I had some personal issues at the time, and I took a break away from the ABI, but I was really interested in what was going on, and I always took a keen interest in what was happening with the association and the industry. And then I was asked whether I would like to come back onto the GC a couple of years ago, and I did for a short while, and unfortunately I had to take a gap for illness again. But yeah, I'm back. I'm back on the GC, and was asked to be vice president, and I was glad to take the role again.
Brilliant, good stuff. So the ABI, tell me a little bit about the ABI and what the association is, and why you got involved in offering yourself up into positions that shape the sort of journey and of the industry.
Well, I joined the ABI quite early in my career as an investigator, looking for some sort of guidance. It was, I played about with investigations within Tremark, I guess, in the early days, and I was looking for guidance and somebody to point me in the right direction. And I got that from some of the old school investigators. So I guess as I got into the business, I realized that the majority of the business was made up from ex-policemen, people that were a lot older than me. And I felt that this should be a great first choice career for a lot of people. So I guess I got involved at the GC level because I felt I was a little bit younger than other members on the GC, and that I would have a different perspective to them.
Yeah.
And I could offer some guidance and put that forward.
Yeah. So being back, in the late 90s or mid 90s, what was it like investigating back then, Mark?
Well, we're talking about before we had the Data Protection Act when I first started. Mm-hmm. That the Data Protection Act really made a huge difference into the industry. When we wanted to trace people, we used tracing agents from my debt recovery background, and nobody really knew where the data came from. Mm. But I remember process serving as a 19-year-old in the back end of the 80s, and yeah, it was a bit of a different world then, I think.
So how have you seen, what would be the sort of few things you've seen change between then and now?
Well, I think compliance is obviously the big one. Mm. When I started Tremark, there was a bit of a hit then from the Information Commission's Office. These are the people that govern data in the UK. They were really starting to realise that there were inquiry agents or private investigators that were potentially breaking the law to get information. And then you started to see that when you were being instructed, that letters of instruction were starting to be quite clear on what they wanted you to do. And I mean, I remember one firm, basically the letter of instruction said, please trace this person, but do not break the law. So, that's when it started. And then we've got to a situation where we are today, where we've talked about licensing in the UK now for, 15 years or so. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. But again, data protection, and particularly GDPR, has given everybody in the country something that they need to regulate to and that they need to follow. So for the first time, I feel that our industry, which is an information-driven industry, has some type of regulation to it, some statutory regulation that we need to follow. So the providers of work to law firms, in my case, the finance companies, they're heavily regulated. That seems to be coming down the line now through the law firms, that they want to ensure that any subcontractors are following the law.
Yeah. How can they do that, Mark?
Well, the first thing is to make sure you're dealing with a reputable company that are quite clear on how they're protecting your data. We're being asked to process data without a subject's consent. Now, that's a big alarm bell straight away. You need to be able to justify what you're doing and how you're doing it. So when you're looking for a company, it's, go to somebody that's recommended. The Association of British Investigators is a great place to start looking in, particularly in the UK. Our guys are vetted now. There's a process they need to go through so that we're comfortable before they come on board, that they understand data protection particularly. They're going to have insurance. There's a discipline process. There's a code of conduct. And they're going to have somebody to keep an eye on them, if there is a problem. And, and give them guidance, give that member guidance, but also, the members of the public or the clients, they've got somebody to go to if they have a problem. If somebody in my company was to breach data protection now, that's really career ending for me. So, I put that out on the line, being a member of the ABI. So I would say that if you're going to use any investigator or inquiry agent in the UK, then try and use an Association of British Investigators member.
Yeah, good points there, Mark. I mean, I know the ABI had this code of conduct, GDPR code of conduct, approved recently by the ICO, which is 5-6 years of hard work. How do you think that will shape the industry moving forward?
I hope it will shape the industry. I think the first thing is, we had this conversation, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, when there was talk of licensing, and we were all pushed to do this British standard BS 10200, which I think Tremark, we were one of the first businesses, and I think your business has done it well, Mike.
Yeah.
And I hope then that, this is going to be brilliant. People are only going to use people that have got a BS 10200. It didn't happen. The market didn't want it, or didn't really take notice. The thing is with this is that GDPR and data protection, information security, it is at top of everybody's agenda running a reputable business. So with a much better chance of this taking hold, data protection is really, really complicated. What the code of conduct does is it explains to investigators what they should be doing in certain scenarios. So there are a lot of grey areas. And I know in putting together the code of conduct, there were some challenges in dealing with certain aspects, tracing people without consent. How could you do that? What is legitimate interest? What isn't? Yeah. So hopefully people are going to take interest, particularly from the client point of view. If it's going to be down to the desire from the industry. Do they want to use people that have done the homework and understand all the challenges that you have being an investigator, collecting data without consent?
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's if the legal industry accept it or use it as a requirement for instructing an agent.
One of the most frustrating things for me, Mike, is, the banks and the finance company, very heavily regulated. And they will do a whole heap of checks maybe on people that they are instructing. But I get banks come to me and they'll ask me, can you do this job? I'll say, yeah, no problem. And I say, yeah, but we're going to instruct you through a law firm, because to instruct you directly, it's too complicated. So we're going to go use a law firm and come through a law firm. And then the law firm will ring me, and I had one recently where, the first thing they wanted to do was barter me down on price, and weren't really interested in the compliance side of it, even though I knew the instruction from that particular bank was coming to me anyway. So that's the frustrating part. We sort of do need the law firms to, realise how important the compliance aspect is.
Yeah, Compliance and also accountability, right? So they
Yeah,
can, yeah.
yeah. I mean, my most popular product is very basic. It's serving court documents on people. But I have people going to people's houses, people that are, maybe going to be irate when they get the papers, maybe they're going to be emotional. Um, and it's very easy for that person receiving papers to make a allegation against the person that's serving the papers. So it's really important that the guys I've got turning up to people's houses, one, act in an appropriate manner, but there's no skeletons in the closet as there were as to their past or history.
Mm.
So there's a lot of vetting that goes on to ensure that our guys that are out in the field are they're going to behave properly.
Yeah, good point. Moving on, Mark. I don't know how much involvement or experience you have with private and public synergy. So, do you ever call upon law enforcement support? Do you ever have or deal with any type of public institution where you need some collaboration? How have you found that? What's your opinion?
Well, it's one way, isn't it? That's the first thing. Yeah, we've had instances in the past where it's quite clear there's some criminal activity going on, and we've brought that to the attention of the authorities. But equally, when I have requested help, I'm not even talking about intelligence here, Mike. I'm talking, we need to go serve some papers on a guy that we know potentially is going to cause a problem. And it can be difficult to get support. But I think if you go out in the right manner, and in those instances say there's a public safety issue, they will generally try and help you. Certainly on fraud issues, we have given information to the police, but trying to get information back or even find out what happened can be an absolute nightmare. It's funny, I'm smiling because we recently served a guy with an injunction for harassment for a law firm. He'd been harassing the partners there, and now guess what? He's harassing my employees and members of their family. So we've had to go to the police and ask for their assistance, and it's a bit frustrating that we need to do that.
Yeah. Do you think licensing or anything else within the private sector investigation industry will help those relationships?
Well, yeah, of course, if we had some sort of statutory licensing, of course, you would hope that it will help us get access to particular types of information, things like the name search facility at the land registry, maybe car registration details with the DVLA. There should be aspects of information or part information that a licensed investigator would get their hands on, or should be able to get their hands on. Do I think it'll happen? Not sure. Licensing investigators will be so difficult purely from a point of view. If you're going to do it on a knowledge base, it would be very difficult because we're so diverse in what we do. So you could only ever really do licensing on the background checks of the individuals concerned, which would be a start at the very least. Maybe the code of conduct, if that was to really take hold, that would be a good start and an unofficial form of licensing in the UK. But it just seemed ridiculous that we've been pushing for licensing all my career.
Yeah.
And I know we had our ABI centenary, several years ago, and you look back 100 years to people that were trying to get licensing then, and here we are, me and you, trying to do the same still. But I don't think that's going to happen. Hopefully, the code of conduct will do something for the industry in that regard.
Yeah, I think I can't believe we're still not licensed here, being one of the oldest countries in the industry in terms of private sector investigating, compared to other European countries and lots of states in the US that all have, licensing requirements. But what the code of conduct brings is it goes straight to the point. The issue is processing data, GDPR. So if you get someone who's a code of conduct member that's jumped through those hoops, then in terms of separate to licensing, that individual is a safe pair of hands in dealing with instruction. So it's like it's maybe a halfway house. It's on the right path, I suppose, but who knows? Right, you said the word centennial, and my ears pricked up. So I remember the ABI Centennial, 2013. That was, 12 years ago. It was a fantastic event. It was in London, and it was joint with the WAD, the World Association of Detectives, midterm meeting.
Yeah.
WAD is reaching its centennial year this year in Chicago in September. First week of September. It's the oldest and largest international association of its kind in the world. It's a huge milestone for the industry. There's going to be representatives from numerous associations, both local, state, and national, that are going to be there. ABI has got a big part there too. Talk to me about the WAD, Mark. I know you've been a member for a long time. Just tell me a little bit about the association, your involvement, your experience, and what you've seen from sort of the outside and now in.
Yeah, so I think it was other members of the ABI that brought WAD to my attention, told me I really needed to be a member. And I'd started to do little bits of work abroad and needed people in different jurisdictions. And a friend of mine, Eric Shelmerdine, I think acted as a referee and got me to become a member. But I've never attended any meetings. I was on the mailing group. I didn't really attend any meetings. Occasionally, when we needed somebody abroad, we knew we'd be in a safe pair of hands if we used somebody who was a member of WAD. So that, again, there's a vetting procedure to ensure that who you're using is licensed if they need to be in that jurisdiction, and that they're of high good standing. So that was my involvement, really. And then only in the past couple of years where I've taken a little bit more of a step back operationally within Tremark, and I've been looking at the bigger picture. And I wanted to do some traveling as well. And I thought, well, I'm just going to look at the WAD again and maybe try and get involved. And as I look to expand our business into more into the international market and get to know a few more people. So recently, myself, Carl Brooker, and Al Dini from Tremark, we went to Lisbon for the midterm, and we just absolutely loved the few days that we had there. But we made some really good contacts as well, and people that we had dealt with before, we were able to put a name to the face, but really get to know those people and get an understanding about them. And I think I made a bit of a mistake in delaying getting involved on a personal level. I think I feel a lot more comfortable now picking up the phone or dropping an email to somebody at the other side of the world to say, "Look, potentially got this scenario. What do you think, and what can we do?" Because in some countries, perhaps in some states, I'm aware you can get a lot more data, and I really wonder how some of those guys would cope if suddenly they dropped into England and had to undertake the same job. But yeah, we're really looking forward to going to Chicago. So we'll be in Chicago, hoping to build on those contacts, and I know have a great time at the same time as well.
Fantastic. You said the right thing there. You've got to show up. You can be member of many associations. If you just on a mailing list, you're just on a mailing list. If you turn up and meet people face to face, break bread, have a few drinks, discuss business, you form these relationships that are not just business, but they're personal. So that agent is going to do your job, Mark, like it's theirs, and they're not going to let you down. So
yeah, it's funny you talk about meeting people and breaking bread. In the early days of Tremark, obviously my target audience then was the law, the legal community, and my bank manager at the time, who was a guy called Mel Nally, he said to me, "Do you go into All Bar One in Leeds on a Thursday night?" And I said, "No, why?" And he said, "Just go in for a few weeks, you'll know people." And I started going into one bar on a Thursday night, and it was just full of all the insolvency practitioners and solicitors in Leeds, which is where I'm from. And I trebled my turnover in a year.
New investigators coming into the market, right? There's so much going on at the moment. And if I was trying to pass on some shortcuts, or maybe not shortcuts, but some guidance tips, what would you say to the entry-level investigator looking, one, for a career in the industry, and how do you go about, navigating your way through those early years? Because it's quite a awkward, I would say, industry to get involved in if you're not from maybe a particular background. What would your advice be, Mark?
Well, I mean, I'll talk about my journey into it, because obviously I'm not from a police background or a military background. And I think it's very, as you say, it's very difficult for anybody coming into a private investigation industry, even if you're coming from the police now, because you're going to come in there with a certain mindset as to, I want to do this work, I want to do that work. But commercially, it's just not going to happen. You really do need something else you need to have I would think, a knowledge or something, transferable skills that you can put into the industry. Now, I came from the debt recovery industry. You know, I'd worked in a law firm, you know, and I was not academically brilliant as a kid. Grew up in a pub in Leeds, a very working class town. In fact, you know, I didn't know what I was going to do when I left school, and I fell into the industry. In Yorkshire, we had a big mining community, and in 1986 there was a huge strike on. Lots of people were struggling, and my school actually allowed you to leave school early if you could prove you got a job to help support your family. I went out at lunchtime. I hated school. Went out at lunchtime, and I got a job as an office junior, making cups of tea and coffee in a debt recovery department of a law firm. And that was the start of my journey. I moved on to becoming a case handler. But we did a lot of insolvency work, and we needed winding up petition serving of a lot of them. And I like following football, soccer for you guys in the States, but my team, Leeds United, played on a Saturday afternoon, and it was expensive. But my boss allowed us to serve the winding up petitions on a weekend. So I used to drive off in my little car on a weekend, and if Leeds United were playing in Oxford, I'd stop in Leicester and Northampton, maybe somewhere else on the way down, and serve a winding up petition on the way down, and I'd get my little fee for doing it, and that paid for my weekends out. So I guess I then started seeing the industry around debt collection. I then went on to work for a debt collection company, being the go-between their clients and the solicitors that they used. And it was there I got more into the pre-legal and could see, well, why are you suing this guy? Because he's got nothing. Why, you know, it's quite obvious he's got nothing. So I started getting more interested in sort of pre-suit inquiries, I guess you'd call them, asset checks. So I had those skills already. I then lost my job. I was made redundant. The company were centralised everything down to London. Did I want to move down to London or not? And I remember going home and saying to my dad, I've lost my job, what am I going to do? And my dad saying, pick up your phone, ring all your clients and tell them you've set up business on your own. And I said, well, I haven't. And he said, well, you know that and I know that, but they don't know that. And so Tremark was formed, and obviously I'm the Mark and Tree's my dad, Trevor. So that's how the business was formed. And I was looking to earn whatever money I could. So I was doing the debt collection. I started serving my own documents, tracing my own debtors, and doing my own inquiries. And I was happy doing that. And it wasn't until some of the lawyers that I was passing work to said, this report you've given us with this case, this is brilliant. Could you do this for some of our other debt recovery work, for our other instructions that we get from other clients? Oh, yeah, that's easy. Yeah, that's good. And the same with process serving. I was doing my own process serving. So quite quickly, my workload on the investigations and inquiry agent stuff was going like that. And I was enjoying it. So I guess that's how I got into it. But even then, I went into football coaching again to supplement what I was earning. And it took a while till I was able to focus full time on investigations. So somebody new coming into the industry now as a young, I think starting your own business will be really difficult. We've got a number of young guys working for us now that have come in here, and this is their first choice career. You know, they've been to university, they've worked elsewhere, but they're coming in here now. Hopefully, this is going to be a career for them. And for the first time, we've actually recruited one who was a civilian investigator within the police force, who's left the police to come and join us. We've actually lost a couple of employees in the past that have gone the other way, young people, but this is the first one to come back the other way. So perhaps be looking at one or two of the larger investigation companies and try and getting in to get some experience, I think, before branching out on your own.
Definitely. What you said something there earlier, first-time careers. Very rare now you get first-time career investigators here, really. Your journey is quite unique, Mark, that you set up and started from ground level up and now built a successful business. That's, you know, you're one of the rare ones. Really.
Yeah, and it's challenging still, you know, trying to upscale your business in that I'm still competing with people in lifestyle businesses in a lot of respects. There's a lot of my competitors who are really good. And by the way, we subcontract sometimes to some of these guys, but they've been in the police. They've got a fantastic pension. They're coming out. It's just, they just want to, you know, supplement the pension and have a good life until they want to put their feet up. You know, that makes things like competing very, very difficult and challenging at times.
What makes a strong leader, Mark?
Well, lots of aspects. I was very fortunate that I went into football coaching when I was 26. I played at an amateur level. I was quite, you know, not a great player, but I was all right. I got injured, hated not being able to play. So I decided to go start my coaching badges. And I followed a decent trajectory, getting my badges and going up. And I just remember on those coaching courses being told that you've got to be confident. You've got to be clear in what the directions you're giving. You can't go in there like a mouse. And that forced me, I guess, to be more assertive to start with. And then I went into managing a really good level women's football team. So I was just an academy coach at Leeds United, and George Graham, who had been manager at Arsenal, had moved to Leeds United, and he wanted the women's section to climb up through the leagues. And Arsenal ladies team were the greatest women's team there was at that time, and nobody else was interested in the job because it was women's football in 1996. And I was given the job of managing the women's team, and that got me into managing a team competitively. So strategic thinking, you know, looking at long-term goals. Was I coaching this player's development, or was I trying to win that game at the weekend? And the ability to try and see things in the bigger picture. Of course, I'd been working on my own, but this brought in things like team building, uniting diverse individuals with a different set of skills, fostering collaboration between people that were just completely different backgrounds, and building trust and promoting inclusivity. It's something that I try to do with my teams till today. I mean, believe me, you know, the emotional intelligence side of it, managing a team of top-level professional girls was challenging at times. They were different to me and the way I thought, and that, you know, taught me a lot. You know, group dynamics, players' emotions, how people deal with things. You know, some people you have to hype them up, some people you have to calm them down, resolving conflicts or dealing with conflicts, you know, dropping people or leaving people out or moving people on. It gave me resilience, adaptability, you know, going through a streak where you're not winning games or dealing with unpredictables or variables like weather and injury and, you know, a bit of disaster recovery. It gave me all sorts of skills, performance management, planning, organisation. But now, I think the biggest transferable one I have is leading with purpose and having integrity, knowing where you want to go and getting that message across to your team, and promoting sort of value-driven leadership are really important. We want to be the best, but how are we going to do it?
Some good tips there, Mark. So, your coaching career, as it were, all the skills you picked up there are all strong leadership traits that you use in your business. You said one point as well about knowing where you want to go. How about if you don't? Because there are times in your journey, right, in your leadership journey, when you're at the top and you're trying to, you're responsible for a team that are underneath you. You've got a few hats that you're wearing. You've got, team responsibility, company development, a plan, a vision, but sometimes the destination isn't clear. How do you tackle that? Maybe similarly, if you're going into a big cup game and you know nothing about the other side.
Well, if you're doing that, you're not a very good manager, are you? I've been on a similar journey quite recently. Some people know I was quite ill and didn't really know what was going to happen. But I think build a team, or try and build a team around you to give yourself some headspace. It is a really big one. I've built a leadership team here over the last couple of years, and we just had a conversation this morning actually about how important it is for you to have thinking time as a manager, whatever level you are. You need to think. You don't want to be in that worker mode all the time where you just do. I think if you're in worker mode all the time, you'll never see the grass for the trees, as it were. You need to think about where you want to be and make some choices and make a decision as well and go for it. One of the worst things you can do is not make a decision. You've got to make decisions. If you make 51% right, then you're winning, aren't you? And if you don't make any decisions, then you'll get nowhere. I've gone off a couple of times with projects or directions in the business, and I've gone and gone and gone. And I think there's a moment where you go, no, that's not working. And it depends what character you are. I'm pretty impulsive, and I do things sometimes probably sooner than I should. But I've realised that now. So, if I realise, that was a bit of a mistake, then I stop pretty quickly. Which is it's probably not what I'm supposed to say, but that's been pretty successful for me.
There's some good nuggets in there, Mark. Not only lead with vision, but build a strong leadership around you. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, Mark. Thank you very, very much for joining us on another episode of Leaders Podcast. Mark Hodgson's details are coming up on the screen now. Feel free to contact Mark with anything you need. Thanks again.